ओम त्यागेश्वरम रामकृष्णम शारदां मातृरूपिणीं विवेकानंदमाचार्यं नत्वा वक्ष्यामि शुद्धये. From this Narada Bhakti Sutra, we have been dealing with the Sutras where Bhagavan or Narada Maharishi, he is telling us Bhakti Mahima, the greatness of Bhakti. How it is greater than all other yogas, Bhakti Yoga, how it is greater. Satu Karma Jnana Yogebhyo Pyadikatara. This Bhakti Yoga is greater than Karma Yoga, greater than Jnana Yoga, greater than Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga here means the yoga as propounded by Patanjali Maharshi. So Bhakti Yoga according to Narada is greater than all these. And the reason he says, he gives two reasons. One he says Phalarupatvat, because Bhakti is its own result. The other is Ishwarasya Dainya Priyatvat and Abhimana Dveshitvat. Ishvara hates egoistic attitude and loves humility. The two reasons he gives. The first reason is that Bhakti is its own result, and the explanation given was Karma Yoga in itself is not a path. The tradition does not accept Karma Yoga as an independent path. It's an ancillary to Jnana Yoga or an aid to Bhakti Yoga, or even ancillary to Raja Yoga also, for purification of the mind. So Karma Yoga is kind of out of race. In Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga, what Narada feels is that, this is Narada's view, there is a disconnect between the practice and the result. The practice of Jnana Yoga or practice of Raja Yoga, you call it Vivek, Vairagya or Yama, Niyama, different practices. But these practices have no connect with actual state of realization of a Jnani or a Yogi. Also during the practice, the techniques change. The methods applied change in all these yogas. Whereas when one comes to Bhakti Yoga, it is one smooth path. You start with Apara Bhakti, preparatory Bhakti. It is also love of God. And you end in Apara Bhakti, it is also love of God. The word Bhakti, the feeling of attraction towards God, the love of God, is there in initial stages. The same love, so to say, matures, purifies, and turns into Parabhakti, which is the goal. So there is a seamless merging, so to say, of sadhana into sadhya, of the efforts into result. There is a seamless merging, no changing of methods. Bhakti is its own result. So this is one of the reasons why Narada feels Bhakti is greater than other yogas. And of course the second reason was egoism and egoistic attitude or lack of humility. These are hindrances on the spiritual path for any sadhaka. But this makes Bhakti Yoga superior to other because this humility and absence of egoism, so to say, gets automatically inculcated in the devotee. Because as devotees, we depend on God for everything. We are aware of our weaknesses, we pray to God. We seek God's help. So humility and absence of egoism, so to say, get drilled into us during the sadhana itself. And this is an advantage Bhakti Yoga has over other yogas. This is according to Narada. Because in other yogas, there is no God per se who will help us. So the sadhaka has to depend on his or her self-efforts. And there is a risk that one may develop an egoistic attitude, lack of humility in other yogas, because one is not seeking help from anybody. This risk is there. It's not that every time it happens. Because even any yogi, any sadhaka, when he or she introspects, will know his or her own faults, will correct, may not seek external help if he or she doesn't believe in God, but definitely will improve oneself. But the risk, yes, definitely there is more risk of developing an egoistic attitude and losing one's humility in other yogas. In Bhakti Yoga, that risk is little less. So because of these two reasons, Narada feels that Bhakti Yoga is greater than other yogas. But when it comes to Bhakti Yoga also, it is not that easy. Especially this sense of humility, one has to be very careful. There are two pitfalls in this sense of humility that we have. One is false sense of humility. We think, yes, we are practicing humility. But true humility, a devotee of God, what is the criteria? The criteria would be that person would not look down upon anybody. Then only we can say we have really achieved or we are practicing humility. One may be humble before God or before some people, but if he or she does look down upon some other, then that humility is fake, so to say. Because a truly humble devotee, he or she will have nobody to look down upon. So one has to guard oneself against this fake humility. And the second thing, Swami Vivekananda came down kind of heavily on this, is misunderstood humility. You know, this they call it Hina Dina Bhava. Hina Dina Bhava. Oh, I am lowly. I am powerless. I am weak. So that kind of attitude being mistook as humility. So humility leading, or this misunderstood humility leading to lack of self-confidence, lack of strength, weakness being taken as humility. That is another pitfall. One has to guard against oneself. So Swamiji says this is not true humility. Humility doesn't mean lack of self-confidence. Humility doesn't mean weakness. And we have the example of Anjaneya. He was full of self-confidence, full of strength, and at the same time humility personified. So Bhakta, he or she practicing humility, has to guard against these two. Fake humility and misunderstood humility. Humility doesn't mean lack of self-confidence or weakness, lack of strength. No. So these are the two pitfalls. But this is how Narada puts it and says that this Bhakti Yoga is greater than other yogas. The next topic is somewhat similar. What is the equation between Jnana and Bhakti? That is the topic. Okay, Bhakti Yoga is greater than Jnana Yoga. But does Jnana in some way or other help Bhakti? That is the question. The knowledge. When you say knowledge, knowledge of God and all that. Does it help development of Bhakti? What is the role of knowledge in the life of a devotee? In the development of Parabhakti? That is the question. And Narada devotes some 5 sutras for that. As he does in some places, he has done in some places. He presents views of others and then he will present his own view. So the first view he presents is Tasyaha Jnanameva Sadhanam iti Eke. Eke means some. So this is not Narada's view. He is presenting somebody's view. What is that view? Tasyaha, of the Bhakti, Jnanam eva sadhanam. Knowledge alone is the means, sadhana. That is a view held by some people. In this sutra or in this context, in this interpretation, Bhakti means Parabhakti. So of Parabhakti, knowledge means supreme knowledge. Supreme knowledge alone is the means. So if someone wants to attain Parabhakti, supreme devotion, what should one do? One should acquire supreme knowledge. That will lead to supreme devotion. That is the view held by some. How and where do you get this view, is there any reference? In Bhagavad Gita, we have a reference. So in 18th chapter, we get this Brahma Bhutah Prasannatma Nashochati na Kankshati Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labhate Param. Param Madbhaktim Labhate. Such a person will attain supreme devotion to me. The sadhaka that is being talked of here in this context is a sadhaka of Jnana Marga, and very advanced sadhaka. And such a person, on the cusp of knowledge, on the cusp of intuitive knowledge, Bhagavan says he or she will have this supreme devotion to me. And bhaktya mam abhajanati. Through that devotion, he or she will know me, will become one with me. So taking this as reference, perhaps some people say that for supreme devotion, parabhakti, this supreme knowledge, intuitive knowledge, that is the only means. As I said, the context of Bhagavad Gita is of an advanced sadhaka of Jnana Marga. This is one view presented by some, and it has a scriptural background. Yes, it's a fact. Bhagavan Sri Krishna has told, so it's a fact. A seeker of Jnana Marga will have that devotion on the cusp of the knowledge, and then will, through that devotion, will know God and enter to God. It's a fact. But is that the only way to attain parabhakti? A seeker of Jnana Marga will attain parabhakti. All right, accept it. But to say that Jnanam eva sadhanam, this is the only way, that doesn't sound reasonable. No doubt, seeker of knowledge will attain devotion, as Bhagavan says, and since Bhagavan has said, yes, it's a fact. But Bhagavan has never said that this is the only way. This only word is added by some people, by some acharyas. Looking at this, they think that knowledge is the only way to attain devotion. Now that is what makes it untenable, unreasonable, because we see many devotees who have attained parabhakti and who did not enter the path of knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna himself is a burning example. The first realization of God that Sri Ramakrishna had was without the help of anybody, any scriptural knowledge, just pure sincerity and yearning. So this view, though presented by some, though having scriptural reference, is a partial view. So the some other acharyas, they present a more balanced view. And they say, Anyonyashrayatvam iti anye. Anyonyashrayatvam iti anye. So there are others who differ from this view and say that, look, there is interdependence. Anyonya ashrayatva, interdependence. Interdependence between what? Now here interdependence is between paroksha jnana and apara bhakti. The interdependence is between these two. Apara bhakti is preparatory bhakti, and paroksha jnana is intellectual knowledge, information that we have about God. And they said these two are interdependent, and together they will lead us to parabhakti. That is their view. This paroksha jnana is knowledge about God. We want to develop love for God. We want to know what God is. What is God's nature? We want to love someone. Where does that person live? What is the nature of God? What is the path? How to reach? What prerequisites are required? Just as you go on a journey, you know the goal, you know the path, you also know what all things I need to carry with me. So what kind of qualities will be required? All this knowledge, it forms part of this paroksha jnana. And apara bhakti is whatever love we have for God. Now it is a It is vitiated by self-centeredness. It's very feeble love. But these two, they say they are interdependent. And with the help of these two, one progresses. Interdependent in what sense? One strengthens the other. That's how they are interdependent. One strengthens the other. That is their view. The knowledge will strengthen aparabhakti. Aparabhakti will strengthen the knowledge. And this combination of the two will lead us to parabhakti. If we see in our life, we find instances, most of the people, when before turning to religion, they would have had some exposure to knowledge. Knowledge in the sense they would have read some book, or somebody would have talked to them about God, they would have heard something, somewhere, some information they would have had. That generates some kind of curiosity, some kind of pull. Then they come to religion. The knowledge brings them, so to say, to devotion. That is not the only case. There are some other examples wherein a person comes to a temple, comes to an ashrama, or meets a holy person. He or she has no idea, but something within responds. There is a pull felt within, where this place, this attracts me, this spiritual ideal attracts me. He or she has not known anything about it. It is bhakti, so to say, felt first. Then that person wants to know more about the ideal. So the bhakti, so to say, leads to paroksha jnana. That is also apara bhakti. But that leads to paroksha jnana. And then this happens, and this keeps on happening. More you know, more you love, more you love, more you want to know. This cycle continues. And that is their view. They say that these two are interdependent. Paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge, or information, or intellectual knowledge, and apara bhakti, the preparatory bhakti, they strengthen each other and thus lead an aspirant to parabhakti. It is their view. This seems to be a very balanced view. We also find many examples of this view. But this is not Narada's view, because he has said Anye. He said there are some others. But what is Narada's view? When he states his own view, he said, Swayam Phalarupata iti Brahmakumara. Brahmakumara, it is a singular, Brahmakumara, singular. Narada is the Manasaputra, spiritual son of Brahma. So he refers to himself as Brahmakumara. So what is the opinion of Brahmakumara, Narada Maharshi? He says, Swayam Phalarupata. A hardcore, so to say, preacher of bhakti. He says there is no need of anything else. Bhakti is independent, self-sufficient. You have whatever apara bhakti, whatever preparatory bhakti, whatever feeble, fleeting love of God, whatever you have, take it, practice the bhakti sadhanas, and this will lead, purify itself, become more and more God-centered than self-centered, and so to say transform itself into parabhakti, this bhakti that you have. You don't need anything else. No paroksha jnana is required. Forget about aparoksha jnana, forget about supreme knowledge. Even paroksha jnana, he says, it's not necessary. Bhakti is swayam phalarupa. Bhakti is its own result. It doesn't need any help from any other yoga. That is Narada Maharshi's opinion. And he gives two examples to substantiate his view. Rajagriha bhojanadishu तथैव दृष्टत्वात्. राजगृह भोजनादिषु तथैव दृष्टत्वात्. न तेन राजपरितोषः क्षुधा शांतिर्वा अक्षत शांतिर्वा, whatever. He gives two examples, Rajagriha and Bhojana. And he says Adi also, some more examples also can be given. He specifically quotes two, Rajagriha and Bhojana. Rajagriha is king's house, that is palace. One knows everything about king's palace. How many acres of land it is on, how many gates, how many doors, where is the meeting place, where is the eating place, where is the dining, servants' quarters. Every inch by inch information that person has. Full knowledge he has. But he says, Natena Raja Paritoshaha. This fact that a person has all this information, mere this fact won't satisfy the king, won't make king happy. That is, that someone knows everything about my palace won't make king happy. Worst case scenario, it may make him suspicious also. Because even thieves have idea about the plan. Enemies have idea. So mere knowledge, the point that he is trying to arrive at is mere knowledge is of no use. If knowledge were of any help, this would have pleased the king. The person had so much knowledge about king and his activities and the palace, but it doesn't please the king. So also Bhojana. One may have by hearted all the recipes, how to cook this, how to cook that, what ingredient, what proportion, how much to burn, all by hearted. Na kshutchantriva. That knowledge won't appease that person's hunger. When a person is hungry, the knowledge of the recipe does not come to the aid and satisfy or pacify the hunger of that person. So knowledge in itself is of no use. If it had any role to play, king would have been happy. The person's hunger would have been appeased by the knowledge of recipe, but it doesn't happen. So this is the Narada's view. Bhakti is entirely and completely independent of knowledge. You don't need any knowledge. One of the earlier sutras, there is a Pathabheda. Swayam Falarupata iti Brahma Kumaraha. It is a singular. But there is a Pathabheda. Some of books might have Brahma Kumaraha. That's a plural. And when it's a plural, those Brahma Kumaras are taken as the four sons of Brahma. They are this Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara, like that, four sons of Brahma. And Narada, what is his connection with them? Narada is the disciple of Sanat Kumara. So he is quoting his own guru along with the brothers of the guru. Brahma Kumaraha, in some versions, it's plural. So that Brahma Kumara refers to four sons of Brahma. Narada is presenting his tradition, so to say. According to the tradition of Brahma Kumaras to which I belong, Bhakti is its own result. So there is one more part of Veda there. But this is the view of Narada, and he has presented it with an example, with two examples. Many more examples also can be given. Mere knowledge of the road doesn't lead me anywhere. Like that, many examples can be given. So these are the different views. Finally, it boils down to two views actually. Whether knowledge will in some way help grow devotion. or growth of devotion is entirely independent of knowledge. These are the two views. Narada has, of course, presented his view. But in Sri Ramakrishna, you see, we find both kinds of statements. To one devotee, he says, how would you love someone unless you know that person? Yes, Ramakrishna says this. How would you love a person unless you know that person? So Sri Ramakrishna is saying, knowledge had some role to play in the growth of devotion. But again, Sri Ramakrishna says, what's the point in counting leaves and branches? You have come to eat mangoes, eat mangoes. Why do you want to know about the glory of God? You have come to love God, love God. So even in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, we find, so to say, him advocating both the views. Even in his life, we find him practicing both the views. The first vision of God was entirely based on utmost sincerity and intense yearning, without any external help, without the aid of any scriptural knowledge. So there he is following Narada's view, so to say. But then subsequently he takes the help of gurus. They teach him. So he takes the help of at least Paroksha Jnana, then practices those disciplines. So in his life also we find him practicing both these views, so to say. For our direction, we need some kind of reconciliation. That we'll see in our next class. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna.